In this session, we'll talk about Big Five personality model, which is also known as FFM, five factor model. But before we do that, let's review our definition of personality. Personality is a stable individual trait. Personality traits are fixed, meaning they are not easily changeable. And personality is signature thinking patterns, signature emotions, which you can also call temperament, key goals or needs of an individual, and signature behaviors displayed by an individual. There are several paradigms of personality, and each subdiscipline in psychology views personality through their own lens. Some examples can be in psychoanalysis, the key models of personality are the ones proposed by Sigmund Freud, or attachment theories that were proposed by Bowlby. Similarly, in behaviorism, the focus is on the behavioral aspects of personality. Behavioral theories of personality were very popular in 1970s, and in fact they were the major paradigms of personality and psychology. And behaviorists essentially argued that since you can't really know for sure what is in somebody's mind, so psyche is essentially a wild goose's chase, and we should instead focus on things that are concrete and can be observed more objectively. And therefore, in this branch, behaviors were considered to be more worthy of scientific investigation. Similarly, there are other disciplines in psychology that have their own way of looking at personality. For example, in cognitive behaviorism, which by the way is different from behaviorist approaches, the focus is on social learning and how our interactions with each other can shape our personality. Similarly, in the branch of cognitive developmentalism, the focus is on distinct stages of mental development that are hierarchical in nature, and as the individual grows through his life cycle, he goes through these hierarchical stages in a predictable manner. Finally, the psychometric approaches of personality, also known as trait theories of personality, focus on measuring the psychological aspects. Psychometric approaches of personality are based on the idea that we can measure the mind, we can objectively quantify our thoughts, our psychology, and therefore it is a systematic attempt to assess personality characteristics. Psychometric approaches are seen as objective and scientific way of describing what people generally are and in quantifying their behavior. Trait theories of personality have proposed thousands of personality traits, and the discipline of organizational behavior primarily relies on trait theories of personality, partly because psychometric approaches of personality are relatively easy to apply. For example, the psychoanalytic theories require background in psychiatry and require expert analysis to reach a conclusion what type of a personality an individual has. But if you look at psychometric approaches of personality, even online tests can be developed that can reliably and validly be used to assess aspects of personality. Therefore, in this class, we will use trait theory of personality. Now, let's talk about Big Five personality framework. This presents five major themes of personality, namely openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Big Five personality traits have been shown to be relevant for workplace behaviors, and this is why we are focusing on them in this class. In the definition of personality, we talked about how it is signature emotions, needs, goals, and behaviors of an individual, and while discussing these personality themes, we will refer to this definition. Now, if you look at this model, you'll notice that I have color-coded different personality traits. The traits of extroversion and neuroticism are shown by green color. This is to highlight that we have consistent research evidence that how these two personality traits have strong genetic component, and also these traits have very specific physiological profiles. So let's talk about extraversion first. A typical profile of an extroverted individual is that this person likes to go to parties, they would start conversation with strangers without any hesitation. If they are in a group of friends or attending an office meeting, they would like to be heard. They will make sure that their opinion is heard. They also like limelight, they're very achievement oriented, they like to be in leadership roles. In terms of physiological correlates, the brain chemical dopamine is associated with this personality traits. And if you have high levels of this neurotransmitter, then you approach the external stimulus actively and you have optimistic viewpoint and you like to explore the environment around you. Research studies have shown that introverted individuals, as compared to extroverted individuals, are very sensitive to external stimulation, and therefore, for example, in response to a lemon drop, if you take a lemon drop, introverts will salivate more compared to extroverts. Similarly, research studies have shown if there's more external stimulus such as caffeine, for example, if you take a cup of coffee or if background music is playing, then the task performance of introverts decreases, whereas extroverts they either perform well or they're not impacted by that. So if you're an introvert, you might find it very difficult to do math problems when background music is playing, and if your sibling or if your roommate is playing music and an extroverted, then you might not get along very well with these loud individuals. Also, in terms of inheritance, research has shown that how introvert or extrovert you are is largely determined at the time of conception, so it's strongly genetic in its nature. However, in terms of nature-nurture debate, whether it is genetic or environment influences you, there is some environmental influence of extroversion as well. For instance, research has shown that children of divorced parents they are more extroverted because from the very beginning they are put in situation where they have to make external relationships and they are exposed to a situation where they have to make new relationships. Now let's talk about neuroticism. This is another personality trait that has strong physiological correlates and is genetic in nature. Are you generally anxious? You worry a lot about different things. You are very moody, and you sometimes feel that you are depressed. So, this might be an indication of neurotic personality trait. In terms of thinking patterns, it is an avoidant type of thinking. You're constantly on lookout for threats and you are scanning your environment about what can go wrong. So neurotic individuals are looking for this type of stimulus in their environment. In terms of emotions, they experience anxiety, fear, so these are their signature emotions. And finally, behaviors. They might snap at you when they're stressed, they might be irritable, you might see them pacing up and down the room when they are anxious. Now, in terms of physiological correlates, the brain chemical that is associated with neuroticism is called serotonin, and generally speaking, higher or lower levels of serotonin are associated with anxiety and emotionality. Another chemical that is associated with neuroticism is called norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is an important chemical associated with brain's warning system. This system motivates individuals to direct their attention toward potential threats in the environment and motivates individuals to be vigilant and cautious. Therefore, it's associated with negative emotionality such as fear and anger. Overall, neurotic individuals are highly cautious. They are preemptively looking for possible threats or problems. Therefore, they come across as worried and anxious. But it is not all bad because a healthy amount of neuroticism is necessary to be successful in life. These individuals will plan better. These individuals will be more vigilant about what's happening in the environment, and they will be more well versed in understanding what is going right and what's not going right. And also, in terms of leadership traits, although you would think that emotional stability or less neuroticism is an important characteristic of a strong leader, also research has shown that neurotic leaders are more sympathetic. And if you want things to be done, if you want a champion for your cause, then neurotic leaders are going to be actually more sympathetic toward your needs. Now let's talk about agreeableness. Agreeableness is a personality trait that is very important when it comes to interpersonal relationship, and its key facets or subdimensions are trust, cooperation, sympathy, altruism, and friendliness. So agreeable individuals are easy to get along with. In terms of their thinking patterns, they focus on relationships. Their motivations and goals are harmony and preserving the good relationship. In terms of emotion, they feel sympathy, they feel compassion for others. And behaviors are they will cooperate with you, they would help you out more. Now, its opposite is a disagreeable individual or antagonist. These are antisocial personalities who don't value relationships, or they are not occupied with preserving relationships. So, in their priority list or in their goals, relationships take a backseat. In fact, disagreeable individuals have lack of trust, or they are more cynical about human nature, and therefore their thinking pattern is that people in the world are out there to get them, so they can either be taken advantage of or they can proactively preserve their interests and attack others. So this is why abrasive personalities or antagonist personalities are hard to get along with. They are always on the lookout for themselves. They're trying to achieve their objectives or make sure that their interests are met. Now, agreeableness and neuroticism are two personality traits that are important from health perspective as well, and a lot of research in coronary heart disease is done to explore the impact of these two personality traits. Research has shown that out of neuroticism and agreeableness, it is agreeableness that is more correlated with heart disease. And surprisingly, neuroticism is not being associated with heart disease. Now you would think, how come these neurotics who are all the time in this stress state, they don't experience heart problems as much as disagreeable individuals? So researchers speculate that because neurotic individuals are used to this type of chemical surge in their body, so they know how to cope with this constant stress. On the other hand, disagreeable individuals have shown to acquire heart disease eventually, and this is often related to the emotion of contempt that they feel for others. And contempt is the signature emotion of disagreeable individuals. Cynicism is a signature emotion. Now, let's talk about openness to experience. This is a personality trait that is related to your intellectual interest, your imagination, artistic interest, and liberalism. I would like to point out that the facet of openness to experience called intellectual interest or intellect does not mean intelligence. It is different. Overall, people who are high on openness to experience are more imaginative. They like to talk about abstract ideas. They like to explore new ideas. They take more risks. They are less traditional. Therefore, this personality trait would be compatible with situations where you have to face uncertainty, where you have to deal with new ideas, where you have to take risks. Therefore, entrepreneurs, for them, openness to experience would be a good thing. Openness to experience is less intuitive dimension of big five personality traits. It is also one of the least researched dimensions, so it's more difficult to understand. So you might not be very familiar with this dimension. Finally, let's talk about conscientiousness. Conscientiousness represents self-discipline, orderliness, how responsible and dependable you are, how much you follow through tasks, how much you can be relied upon. So these individuals are very dutiful. On the other hand, less conscientious individuals, they might be disorganized. For example, let's say you step in somebody's office and you see it's really cluttered. There are a lot of sticky notes all over the place. So that might be one indication of this person is less conscientious. And again, this was just an example. This is one dimension. Orderliness is one dimension of conscientiousness. So just because you see somebody like this, it's very simplistic. Do not assume that this person is not reliable. Out of all big five personality traits, conscientiousness, according to research, is single most important predictor of job performance. So this is a really, really important trait. So far we have talked about these personality dimensions of big five individually, but I would encourage you to think about profiles. And there are several combinations possible. For example, think about an individual who is highly disagreeable but is also very conscientious. What would happen in team settings with this type of individual? A very disagreeable individual who is highly conscientious. These individuals might be very difficult to work with in teams, not because they will not complete their work, because they will have friction with individuals who are less conscientious, and because they are disagreeable, so they would let it out. Similarly, think about a combination of an individual who is very low on conscientiousness but very high on openness to experience. In fact, this combination is a lot of time associated with counterproductive work behaviors. Now I would like to present this meta-analysis conducted by Judge and his colleagues in 1999 on big five personality traits and career outcomes. And you will notice that in this table in columns we have different careers. For example, the first one is realistic careers, then investigative careers, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. Realistic careers, for example, involve tangible or physical activities. For example, if you are an engineer, it might be a realistic career. Similarly, investigative careers, they involve activities requiring thinking, organizing, and understanding. For example, a researcher would be an example of investigative career. Artistic careers involve self-expression or artistic creation. For example, a film director. Social careers involve interpersonal activities. For example, if you are a salesperson, it would be more of a social career line. Enterprising careers involve verbal activities to influence others or to attain power and status. So a lot of time managerial and executive positions will fall within these categories. Finally, conventional careers involve rule regulated activities if you are a judge or if you are in a government organization. Now in the rows you would notice big five personality traits listed, and also you would see general mental ability or intelligence. Overall, the results showed that intelligence was positively correlated with attraction to investigative jobs and negatively related to attraction with conventional jobs. In terms of personality traits, you would notice that extraversion was positively correlated with attraction to social jobs and negatively correlated with attraction to realistic and investigative jobs. So an extrovert will not be very happy with data analyst job. As expected, openness was negatively correlated with attraction to conventional jobs. And conscientiousness was positively related with attraction to investigative jobs because these would require considerable methodical approach. Neuroticism was positively associated with attraction to realistic jobs. And agreeableness did not correlate with any of the job classifications investigated in this research. So this might be of interest to you in terms of your own personality traits and which careers are more suitable for you. In one of the assignments, you will be required to complete your personality self-assessment, and it would be really valuable for you if you complete that personality self-assessment and consult with this table and investigate which occupational line is more suitable for your personality traits. With this, we end our session. Thank you very much for listening.